Welcome to Quilting Kentucky Stories, a special series from Tales from the Kentucky Room. I am Sylvia Lovely, coach, teacher of writing, and particularly writing the stories of your life. The stories you will hear, most of them are from my writing students in the Carnegie Center for Literacy and Learning class entitled Writing the Stories of Your Life, or from opportunities I have had to coach budding writers. Some of these stories are funny, some sad, and sometimes both. They are not lengthy, but each adds on an exclamation point to life. Listen now to Iraqi war veteran Terry Hall tell of his journey from wartime and personal tragedy to faith and hope. This episode deals with heavy thoughts, emotions, and feelings, including some dealing with suicide. Take care in listening to this episode.
Hi, my name is Terry Hall, and I'd like to tell you a story about my life that begins in Saudi Arabia during the Gulf War. I was a maintenance officer with a Patriot missile battery there, and we were responsible to protect against Scud missiles at Dahran Air Base. We were successful for 6 missile intercepts, first time it ever happened in history. Unfortunately, on February 25th, I think, a missile got through our defense. Our system failed to detect the missile because of technical problems that were way beyond what we can go into right here. But I, as maintenance officer, failed was how I felt at the time. When I first found out 28 soldiers died in that attack, over 100 were injured, and I found that out within minutes of the attack. I was shocked. In disbelief, I felt such immense guilt that just never left, because I felt it my responsibility to make sure the thing worked the way it's supposed to. I came home from the war to a separation from my wife. She left within 24 hours of me getting home, left me with our 7-year-old son, and moved in with another soldier. I was a mess because of the war, because of my personal life, but I couldn't wait to get back to church. I had missed it while I was gone, and I needed it. So Sunday morning, I got Chris up and we got dressed and went to church, and I sat down and I was praying, God, just come over me, brush over me with your spirit. I need to feel you. I am so empty right now. I'm hurting so much right now. But there was nothing. I just felt empty. So, I don't know, a couple worship songs in, I leaned over and said, "Hey, bub, you hungry?" He said, "Yeah." So we got up and left. I didn't go back to church for a long time. For years, instead I started drinking. So I'd put him to bed every night and grab some rum and Coke, drink myself to sleep. It was the only way I could deal with the pain. I know it wasn't a good solution, but it was all I had. I just felt that I should have died in Saudi Arabia. I felt that it would have been better for everybody. I'll drive to work in the mornings, and along the road there were light posts for 30 miles, and I would just look at those light posts and think, man, a right-hand turn and I'm over. I don't have to hurt no more. I don't have to think no more. But I couldn't do it. They would have known it was suicide. And my dad had tried to commit suicide when I was a kid. I just wasn't going to do that to my son. I wasn't going to do that to people that loved me. So I became a single parent and left the military. I moved back to Pike County. And I'm telling you, I felt so isolated. There was nobody I could talk to about what was going on with me. My dad couldn't handle the pain that I was in at the time. So I couldn't talk to him. I felt at that time in my life like I had failed as a soldier, like I had failed my son as a father and as a family man. I felt worthless at the time, and I just hurt. And it was in that period of my life when Vickie came into my life, and eventually we would marry. Vickie was the first connection I'd had with another person that really was a connection. I mean, I think she saved me. I don't think I could have kept going the way I was. But our marriage wasn't perfect. She had a lot of patience. She had to. I don't know how she loved me. I was such a mess. I couldn't communicate. I was stuck in my own head with the guilt, with the ghost of 28 soldiers. Eventually, my back failed, and it's a very odd thing, but That helped me to have hope again. I was able to believe in God again because I felt like He finally was righting the wrong that had happened in Saudi Arabia. I felt like this was balancing the scales, if you will. I had to be operated on. It was a failure. I was able to walk. It took 6 months to get off a walker, but I was able to walk again. I was able to continue working for a few years, but eventually in 2001, that was it. I couldn't work anymore. Between the back pain and the emotional pain and the depression and the anxiety that was constant, I couldn't go anymore. So losing the ability to work just drove me into deeper depression. I was taking a lot of pain medicines. I isolated. I just would go to bed at night and just be praying, God, just don't wake me up in the morning. I wouldn't kill myself because, again, my dad had tried that. And I wasn't going to do that to nobody, but I would go to bed and pray, God, just don't wake me up in the morning. I don't want to hurt. I don't want to keep hurting the people around me. They'd be better off. I don't know how she put up with me, but she did. Me and Vic fought all the time. I couldn't communicate. She couldn't talk to me. I was so defensive. And I thought we were going to end up divorced. So that was the way we went for a long time. And eventually I realized that she needed something from me. She needed me to be more loving toward her. So I sat down one night after dinner and I said, Vickie, I want you to know I love you and I'm here for you. No matter what's going on in your life, I'm here for you. Me and the boys. And she just looked at me. She didn't hear me. And I was like, yeah, she don't care. It's over. So she didn't respond to me. I got up, grabbed a bottle of wine, went down to my workshop, and I was going to get drunk. I figured I'm leaving in the morning. I'm just going to get drunk tonight so I don't have to hurt. And I drank a bottle of wine, and then another, and then another. And eventually they found me laying passed out in my woodshop. Vickie and my son took me to a VA hospital. I asked them to just let me die. I begged them, just let me die. But they didn't. So I spent a couple of days in the drunk tank, and while I'm there, I met a guy named James Holiness. He was a veteran like me. He was a mess like me. He was a heartfelt man. We sat and talked, and he shared his story and where he came from, the uniqueness of his name. And I left with a positive feeling about him, hopeful for him that he was going to be okay. A year later, I sat and watching TV, and they told about finding a homicide that had happened in Kentucky, here in Lexington. A homeless man, James Holiness, was found decapitated and stabbed several times under a bridge off Manowar and Nicholasville Road. I was shocked. I couldn't believe that his life ended that way. It was terrible, but my life continued. Vickie and I continued to struggle, and in 2017, in late November, we got in a fight. I needed to leave. I needed to get away. I needed space because I was spinning in my own head. She grabbed the car keys because she was afraid I was going to hurt myself if I got on the road. She blocked the door on me 2 or 3 times. Eventually I got out. I didn't have my wallet. I didn't have keys. I didn't have anything. I just set out walking down the Harrodsburg Road. Probably walked a couple miles. It's 2:00 in the morning. Eventually a guy pulls over in his car and he says, "Hey man, you want to ride?" The first thing I thought of was James Holiness and how his life ended under that overpass. I looked at the guy and I said, sure, and got in because I didn't care. It would have been okay. I really didn't care. So I got in the guy's car and we started riding, and I was talking to him a little bit, and he said, I got to tell you, I was laying in bed and God woke me up and said, you got to get out and drive. I want you to drive down the Harrodsburg Road because somebody needs me. And he said, I did. And I found you, and I'm glad I did, he said. So he said, I'd like to pray for you. Do you mind if we just pull over and I pray for you and your family? And I said, sure. And the guy pulled over and he prayed. He prayed for Vickie. He prayed for me. He prayed for my kids. He prayed for that we would find peace. And when he got done, he looked at me. He said, do you care if I call your wife? I said, okay. So he did. Vickie said, please just bring him home. I want him home. Just bring him home. And the guy took me home. I just went straight to bed. We didn't talk that night. Got up the next morning. We didn't talk. But a few days later, she told me about a program that a coworker told her about named Save a Warrior for people struggling with post-traumatic stress. And she said, I think it would be really good if you would call and talk to these guys and maybe go. And I said, sure, I'll do that. And I really had no intention on doing that. I didn't deserve that kind of help. I didn't want to get into it. About, I don't know, a few weeks later, she asked me again. I said, yeah, I want to call the guy. So a few weeks later, guy calls me from Save a Warrior. Says, hey, let me just say, he said, I know that you didn't call, so I called you, and I know you wasn't going to call. So he told me about Save a Warrior, and I agreed to go. I went, and it was an amazing healing experience for me. They taught me meditation. They helped me to let go of the guilt, to realize it was not my fault that those people died. It was a system failure. It was my nature to take responsibility, but I had to let that go. I had to bury the dead. They taught me how to meditate. They taught me how to communicate again. They taught me how to connect. It was the most incredible healing 5 days of my life. And I came home a different person. Things weren't perfect, but things were so much better than they had ever been for me and my wife. We've learned, we've grown together in the time since I went to Save a Warrior. I've continued to meditate every day for the last 5 years. It has been the most healing thing in my life that I have known. But then I started writing again, and I got into a writing group with a friend here in Lexington. And as we worked through the process of writing my story, she helped me realize the miracle that happened on Harrodsburg Road in that cold November morning, that God sent that man for me. I mean, the miracle of that happening is just more than I can even get my head around. Frankly, God sent his son for us. And as if it wasn't enough, I had to have God send somebody a second time to come and snatch me off of that street where I was ready to go. I tell you all this to tell you this. It doesn't matter what you've been through. It doesn't matter who's hurt you, how they've hurt you, what you've heard, what you've seen, even what you've done. Your life matters. And no matter how much you hurt right now, you can have joy and peace again in your life. Just don't give up. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your life. Go out and find that healing. And if you don't find it the first time, keep looking. Keep searching until you find healing, because you're worth it. You deserve it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Quilting Kentucky Stories, a special series from Tales from the Kentucky Room. If you want to hear more episodes like these, you can subscribe, rate, and review Tales from the Kentucky Room on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Or you can visit us at lexpublib.org/podcasts. That's LEXPUBLIB.org/podcasts. We'll be back with another patch for the quilt of Kentucky stories.